Good afternoon, friends. Delighted to be with all of you. Just want to take a few minutes to maybe run down memory lane a little bit, but then talk about the situation we are in, the phenomenal opportunities it presents, and of course, the moments we are in cause many challenges, and we have to look at them as things to solve through talent development. I'm particularly delighted to be talking to all of you from our global competency centers, because I firmly believe that our GCCs, among all the parts of our large IT industry, the GCCs are perhaps the ones who are pushing the boundary on many dimensions of the products and services and the service level they're giving. So if we look at a very quick rundown, my experience, which now in the industry is more than 4 decades, what started out as a BPO for Amex became business process management with Genpact and WNS, moved on to becoming global innovation centers as many companies felt that there was a need to do much more than just use the technical resources. Finally, to arriving at this very new important vantage point of global competency centers, because we are not just talking of technology, we are not even just talking of innovation, though that's a big word. To me, the word competency here is all-encompassing. Competency not just in how to use technology, not just on innovative ideas, but a competency that goes end to end, because organizations who are putting up the GCCs now and those who are upgrading their existing GCCs are now saying that the thought leadership, right from product conceptualization through to the end of service follow-up, the whole 9 yards is now going to be the focus, and is the focus for building thought leadership for corporations wherever they are based in the world. So this, all of you represent a community which is very important for India, because it's not just about size, it's very much more about scope. Now, I'm sure none of you missed this very interesting interview that ET did with Mark Zuckerberg. Two things came out of that for me. One, his comment which said that Indian talent will shape a better metaverse. So he's seeing it as something which will move it ahead. And the comment he makes that the world's largest base of app developers, India will have the largest base by 2024. These two are among many other things he talks about. But to me, I think the GCCs represent that cutting edge of everything that has to happen, not just with the metaverses of the world, they are suppliers at one level, but every company, irrespective of what they're doing, whether they're doing product engineering, they're doing research, they're doing design, they're looking at the customer proposition, they're conceptualizing the customer proposition, or then doing everything that it takes to fulfill that proposition at the best level. So I'm delighted to be spending these few minutes with all of you. A minute or two on NIIT. I'm sure all of you have heard enough, but I do want to take just a couple of minutes, because we finished 40 years this year. Worked in over 40 countries as a company, and should we say, trained over 35 million people in all these countries. We deal with school children all the way to chairmen. We've worked with presidents of countries, prime ministers, many chief ministers in our country, many who've led the IT revolution, whether it was Chandrababu Naidu and everybody else. And I've had, therefore, the opportunity to deal across generations of learners and understand how their minds work and how they think and how they learn. And also, I think in terms of technologies of learning, well, chalk and board, we still do the chalk and board, but starting with the overhead projector, which was state of the art in 1980s, through to linear video, to interactive video, to Laserdisc, all the way to AR, VR, and everything in between. I think we've had the good fortune to experiment with all of them as they were coming out. And during this period, the most important area we learned in was the area of learning science. And right from the first period when we set up the Institute for Research in Information Systems to the Center for Research in Cognitive Systems, which we set up in my alma mater, which is IIT Delhi, through to working with professors of Yale who set up the Institute for Learning Sciences in the Northwestern University. And now we have our own university, as you know, the not-for-profit NIIT University, and they're doing research in learning sciences. And we've had by design, we worked with thought leaders in all spheres where we operated, whether it was quality, where we worked with Philip Crosby, one of the great thinkers, or software engineering, where we worked with Edward Yorton right through the 80s, with Edward De Bono on innovation, with Ron Hoffman, who's the last word in service quality. So we worked very closely with all of these to help them shape our own thinking. And now, as you probably know, our managed training services business is focused on the Fortune 100. And in India, we see the GCCs as the top end of our focus in terms of customers. I wanted to spend these few minutes that I have to sensitize ourselves to the impact the last 2 years have had on a couple of dimensions, which should very seriously inform all the thinking that we do in the management and development of talent. So first, the positive. And that has been that COVID has forced us to use technology even beyond its limits. We always had enough technology, which we were finding change management problems, people not embracing it. But COVID has forced the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor to embrace technology for survival. And therefore, no resistance to usage, resistance to change didn't exist because it was a question of survival. And everybody embraced technology for that purpose and discovered the many powers of technology. So every human experience, I'm willing to say this, every human experience has been shaped and altered and largely improved through technology in this short period, in every geography of the world, at every level of rich and poor. So I'd call it rampant and pervasive digitalization. And that's obviously one of the very big tailwind that each of you are getting. So this is the one big opportunity, and we know it all, so I don't need to talk about it, but I want to touch on two challenges which should inform our thinking on talent and talent development. The first of it is the organizational challenge. I think organization structures are deeply dented in this period. And there are very severe employee engagement problems. Many of you have sensed it, but you may or may not have sensed it to its fullest depth. But there is a huge disturbance in organizations. So imagine that earlier we talked about the advantage of working in groups and being in the coffee machine and chatting and all of those good things that did to team building and collaboration. But in this period, have you realized that between two Zoom calls that your employee is doing or development work that he's doing is also giving a job interview? Not because he wants it, but because the headhunters get in there. So organizationally, there are forces at work which we need to recognize and address through our talent development initiatives. We have to calm down people, we have to get them focused, and we have to do a hell of a lot more to engage them, to be engaged with the organizations and their work. Now, people do say that, look, actually our productivity is higher. Let me warn you that just going by the metrics that we measure productivity by and incentivize people by, we are doing very well in our sector, most of us. but at a cost which we are not recognizing. The cost of disruption in the organizational fabric and the cause of disengagement and a large amount of burnout. That's the organizational challenge. And lastly, the personal challenge. Not just to do with our companies and how we manage, however good we are. I think the socio-emotional disturbance is a term I picked up talking to school principals who talk about young children, because there it's visible. The social emotional challenge is visible and palpable. In organizations, we have people who can control it and cover it up. But this is a huge, huge pressure for every human being as they cope with the near and dear ones getting affected and the day-to-day pressure of working from home. And by being away from work, which most of our workers are, I talked about the disengagement with teams, and we're doing 100 things to cope with that. But what I notice as perhaps the most important thing to touch upon is to reignite the sense of purpose in every one of our people at work. Everyone. And that's actually the solution also to the engagement problem. That people are wondering, what am I doing with this strange situation? So I think as we look today at talent development, this 2-year period, and hopefully not much longer, has helped us to deal with technology, pedagogy, learning sciences, in ways in which we were dreaming of. At NIIT, we started dealing with technology in the 1980s. And we always found that it was difficult to get people to embrace it. So that is cleaned up. But we've never in our history of mankind, we call it unprecedented COVID, seen so much stress on people, organizations, structures, groups, hierarchies. And this is very, very badly disturbed. And to me, if I have to say that as learning professionals, as talent development professionals, this perhaps should take center stage as you design your instruction, whatever you're teaching. So we do say that skill sets are important and the world is coming here. But you'll also hear my colleagues talking about mindsets. And I'm trying to go a little beyond that, because mindsets have to continue to change with time. But this disturbance of the moment is shaking things up to a point where people are questioning the purpose, the very purpose. And now actually we see that companies with great value systems, companies which are very linked to social objectives, and many of your companies are, companies which have always had a good heart to work with corporate social responsibility, companies which have given time to their people to deal with social issues. You have a head start because you've dealt with the human side of enterprise. But this is the time actually to help each person, even if you're doing a technical program, to spend a certain percentage of the time to give them the purpose of why they're doing what they're doing and the purpose of the organization, and aligning those purposes and letting people realize that this is the place they belong to. This is the place they want to belong to. Because you can teach people skills. But I've always seen and found that if you go to work after having a little squabble with your wife and you're a programmer, you'll make 5 times the number of mistakes that you do normally. And you'll be 1/5 the productivity, because we're in the century of the mind. The machine is the mind here. And currently, as I said, while technology is helping us to do a lot, we need to focus in our learning programs, irrespective of the subject they have. We have to have a preamble. We have to get a reconnection with the purpose that people are doing with the company, the project, the assignment, with the team. And this should get, the human side of enterprise should get a huge amount of focus and attention in everything that you do for the near-term future, maybe a year, maybe more, hopefully not more, because at least adults can learn how to adapt. So I want you to leave this thought as you think about talent development, because in the short term, this is very important to hold your talent, to build them, and to make them do the best.